What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. I got a good friend on here today, Dave Fladd from iStrike, as well as Release Over 20. And we're going to be talking about kind of the birth of Release Over 20. We had a podcast a year or so ago kind of talking about how Release Over 20 came to be. But we're going to kind of give you all the full story of and talk about what it's become today and kind of the goals and aspirations for it going forward. And then also really pick Dave's brain about some fall and wintertime trout fishing down in the low country, down around Charleston, and in the greater South Carolina area. So excited about that. And before we get into that, I just want to remind y'all about Eric Williams, my good buddy, our realtor, just a great realtor in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. If you're looking for a house, if you're looking for investment real estate, if you're looking for land, any of that stuff, he covers it all. He's helping my wife and I look for a little piece of property right now to hopefully build a house on in the next year or two. So definitely check him out if you're interested in any of that. But enough pre-show chit chat. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Dave. What's going on, man? Good to see you.
How you doing, Jud? Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad that we're doing this, and we've been kind of corresponding back and forth a good bit lately. But happy to get on here and actually get to hang out, do a podcast together, and catch up. So, how have things been down your way?
It's been good. It's been like drinking from a fire hose lately because it just iStrike being super busy and successful, which is a great thing. But also, which we'll get into, Release Over 20 is now its own nonprofit organization. So it's kind of like a startup, starting a new business from scratch.
Yeah.
And I've done that now a few times, and it's a lot of work, but it's fun, but just a lot of work.
Yeah, I feel like you have to get better at it. Like now you kind of know the hoops to jump through a little bit more than last. But is doing the nonprofit thing kind of a whole new beast as opposed to just a business?
It is a little bit. I mean, it's still a business, but obviously you have to be different regulations to keep in mind in terms of staying legal and whole space, that's new to me. So we're just trying to get the right people to advise us.
Right.
What can and can't do and that sort of thing.
Well, I feel like most people that are on this podcast have heard of Release Over 20, but kind of give us the backstory, explain what it is, explain kind of, like I was saying earlier, just the story of the growth and kind of, it really took off like wildfire. I remember how quickly the Instagram grew, and I was seeing Release Over 20 stickers everywhere and hashtags, and so just kind of tell people the backstory of it.
Sure. So I'm in the past, if you really want to know like a lot of the details, you need to go back to Jud's history of Eastern Current, and you can hear all the details. But
yeah.
In a nutshell, I mean, you had a huge part in launching this thing. It basically is something I've been doing for about 10 years, releasing trout over 20 inches, and just because I just felt like I wanted to make a difference myself, because there was never going to be a law for an upper slot for trout in Charleston, South Carolina. So I just thought it was a personal way for me to make a difference myself, even though it's just one person. And pretty selfishly just wanting more fish and more gator trout to catch. Who doesn't want that?
It's selfish, but also selfless at the same time, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think so. But, it's kind of an epiphany. It's like, most people are just like, well, I keep my limit, or just, the DNR says I can keep this much fish or this size fish, and that's the law. But, there's no reason you can't make your own law that's more restrictive.
Right.
Just follow it, just like, sort of making an oath to do it.
For sure.
That's in a nutshell what it is. It's not really about over 20 per se. In fact, if you look at our mission, it says we're trying to influence anglers to follow their own personal laws more restrictive than the law, actual law, and we're doing it by trying to be using positive reinforcement and using facts that are boiled down from scientific research. Because it's my opinion that most anglers, and I count myself as among them, most anglers don't know the basic facts about the fish they're catching and releasing. Probably one of the most glaring ones is that most people don't realize that every flounder of keeper size is female. Every single one. And to me, that was shocking to hear. And you look at the research, and it shows a 30-year downtrend in the numbers, it shouldn't be really surprising that every flounder capped is female. I mean, that's the spawning, brood stock. And we're not at all about releasing every fish.
Right.
I keep fish all the time, and I don't keep a lot. I keep enough to eat fresh, but it's way less than the law allows me to keep.
For sure.
I keep one or maybe two. So that's not a lot of people. We get sometimes a lot of misconception that that's what we're just like. You got to release everything, and that's not the case. But anyway, so it's not really about over 20. It's kind of like a marketing thing. It's a nice round number. It's based on my own personal belief, but it's kind of like you set your own limits and then you follow them.
For sure.
You know what I mean? But that being said, we are rewarding people for releasing fish over 20 inches. And you can choose to, keep some over 20 if you want, but if you choose that your limit's 23, release all of them over 23, just send them in. We'll count them toward the initiative.
For sure. That's super cool.
Does it make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And, I have trouble. I was going to make a joke about how I only catch big fish and I have to do 23, but it's not even, it wasn't even going to be that funny. No, I'm with you on it. And one thing I was nervous when we first talked about this is like, I want to do this with my clients. And I was like, I'm going to have a lot of my clients are very into this type of thing, especially my regular clients. And then you have some tourist type clients that, I mean, out of everyone I talked to this summer about releasing, because I don't catch many trout from in the dead heat of summer or the dead of winter. I don't target them very much, but clients were like super into it and thought it was really cool. And when you explain it and you really understand where it's coming from, like people are all about it usually. Now you get some people that they're only going to fish once a year and they want as many fish as they can to take home. As much meat, like an extra couple ounces of meat means a lot to them. And I get that, and I can't make them, let the fish go. But that's something I've started to tell people. I was like, hey, if you want to keep fish, we can keep her. If you want to keep your limited trout, we can keep our limited trout, but we're going to release the big ones. Anything over 20 inches, we're going to release. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. It does stink when you get on like a good bite of big fish, and all the fish are over 20, and they really wanted to keep fish. And you're like, no, we got to let them all go. That one's harder to pitch to people. But just having that as an open conversation with clients and teaching people why it's important. So many people just, like you said, just think that the laws are the end all be all and the best solution for the fisheries, and they aren't typically at all. So
Right.
I think that's super neat. So since the birth of Release Over 20, kind of where has it kind of grown in the way that you thought it would? Where has it taken y'all to now?
Yeah, a great question. So last time that we had a podcast was with you and Joe,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a few months after we got rolling, and it was really taking off. And since then, it's been growing steadily and pretty fast too. I want to say like maybe 10% a month.
That's awesome.
Which it really adds up. I think
Yeah.
we have almost 8,300 followers on Instagram now.
Yeah.
And it's we've decided to add a couple species to what we're rewarding. We added flounder at the beginning of 2021.
Yeah.
As a result of like some of the push down here in South Carolina about the fact that flounder were in decline.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the September of 2021, we added sheepshead because I was listening to some people. Daniel Mancari has a podcast up in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And they were seeing some real problems with big sheepshead up there getting cleared out of. Used to be a plentiful amount of them.
Yeah.
And when you look into those species, they have some compelling reasons to release them. Like flounder, obviously, they're all female at their keeper size. That's kind of a slam dunk. But
Yeah. No
what I
arguing
didn't
that.
realize about sheepshead until I started researching them is that they grow real slow. So they're kind of like, picture like a human adult male. They might be maximum average 6 feet in height. So you grow real fast when you're a teenager, and then you slow down, and then you just get fatter.
Right.
So that's what a sheepshead does, and the number is pretty crazy, at least. And I have to say this is based on South Carolina research.
Uh-huh.
Because I have a lot to learn about how that species changes along its range. It's pretty wildly different. But in South Carolina, an 18-inch sheepshead might be 5 years old, but when it hits 20 inches, it's 10 years old.
Wow.
So, you think, wow, I got a 21-inch sheepshead. That's going to be great on a dinner table, and it will. But the thing is, that's an old fish.
Yeah.
And you keep all those big fish out of a spot, and it's going to be like 10 more years until those would rejuvenate to that size.
Yeah, for sure.
It's much better to keep an 18-inch here than it is a 20.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not
Small
know that.
difference in length, but it's a big difference in how old they are.
Yeah, and an 18-inch fish as opposed to a 20-inch fish, as far as meat for the table, it's not much of a difference at all, really. That's the same argument I have with people about trout. I'm like, a 22-inch trout as opposed to a 18-inch trout, you're really not going to notice a difference on the fillet. Maybe if I'm filleting it, you might notice a difference because I'm not very good. But there's about the same amount of meat on them. So, and the same thing is like those bigger trout, they just get bigger bellies. Like the fillet doesn't necessarily get all that much bigger. It's really the belly and the girth of its stomach and its head and everything that gets so much bigger. So you're not really doing much for yourself to keep those bigger ones. Are there any other fish that y'all have added besides the sheep's head and the flounder?
That's it so far.
Mm-hmm.
We're holding off right now. I would say probably the next one we're going to add would be striper.
Cool.
Hugely popular species along the whole coast.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really popular. Adding a species comes at a cost.
For sure.
Monetary cost.
Yeah.
And we're just being careful about overextending ourselves until we can afford to provide the decals and whatnot. I'm going to show you these. I don't know if it's going to show up on the thing, but these little decals that we had made for tallying your catches. So they've been really popular. I call them helmet decals, but they're kind of like tally decals, sort of.
Yeah.
You can request these when you enter a fish. And I have a whole grid of them on the side of my inside gunwale on my boat.
Oh, that's
for
cool.
2021. I think I ended up with 16, and I've started 2022 already. But it's kind of cool because you can look down and just sort of measure yourself on how many you've released.
Yeah,
but
that's
now
awesome.
we actually have these species-specific ones. So I've got I had Kevin Putnam from Putnam Studios make these, and they're kind of cool because they're in the same theme kind of styling as the trout. So now we got a flounder and a sheep's head one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Send to people when they release one, but it's funny though because I'm finding that these species that have a lot of table fare value it's a much earlier in the quality of releasing. If you follow, I don't have a lot of entries every month. It's like maybe 10 or 12 flounder.
Yeah.
Maybe under 10 sheep's head right now compared to currently in January we have 210 trout.
Wow.
So it's a big difference, but I think we'll get there over time.
For sure. I think it's just an awareness thing.
Hard time releasing this big like a flounder. It's like, wow, this is going to be great dinner.
Definitely. That's the tough one about a flounder. Is like even catching flounder, it's hard to convince people with even clients like, hey, we can go catch 50 flounder. And they're like, because we have a season now. And they're like, well, can we keep them? And I'm like, we can't keep them right now. And they're like, well, we don't want to catch flounder if we can't keep them. But I'm like, catching flounder is so fun to me. Like, I really like flounder fishing, especially in the ocean. And I think it's just trying to just grow this catch and release mentality for all fish. And not that it's bad to keep them, but that you don't always have to keep fish, and that it's just fun to catch them. So,
and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, our overarching goal is just to change that mentality on a large scale,
right?
Over a lot of pretty much any species. So, just the fact that we have these three now is just the beginning. I'm going to hope over time we can add almost every species to it.
For sure.
And then reward people for that. It'll grow everything a lot. But the thing is, the more you start releasing fish, the more you want to. That's
Definitely.
what I found.
Definitely.
A lot of times, I'm maybe keeping less fish than I used to just because I enjoy releasing them.
Right.
I just feel like it's the right thing to do. It's just my own mentality has changed as a result.
Oh, definitely. It is very fun to catch them and release them, and it's still.
Let me ask you this: if you caught like a 9-pound flounder, wouldn't you consider that a huge thrill?
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
I would too, man. I'd be like so stoked.
Yeah,
And
9 pound flounder would be awesome.
flounder, but the more we do that, the more of those are going to be around.
For sure. That's just that mentality, and I think y'all have done such a good job of making it cool. I mean, the stickers that I see them all over our town. The Release Over 20
Cool.
stickers, and hearing people talk about it, and you can just say Release Over 20, like everyone's heard of it. Like everyone in our fishing community here has at least heard of Release Over 20. They might not even know that it's like a Instagram page and a initiative and whatnot, but they've at least heard somebody say it, which I think is you're on the right, the right path towards actually really making a difference. And I think it's just exposure and getting the right people to be doing it and to be posting about it, because it's the whole reason anyone does anything nowadays is because someone that they think is cool on social media is doing it. You know what I mean? And so, and that's not the full reason, but I feel like just and it's such a great cause, and I feel like it is just going to blow up as people start to really catch on and see that catching and releasing is cool. Like it's not posting it's becoming cooler than posting a picture of a bunch of dead fish, on a cutting table or whatnot. So
Yeah, and I think just as a case in point is what Chris Bush and those guys at Speckled Truth have done.
Yeah,
they've really made it cool to pursue giant trout, but not only pursue them, but take care of them,
definitely
handle them right, release them healthy, and that's probably. I mean, I think that's probably why our trout numbers are so high, because I don't even think they have an idea how big the impact of Speckled Truth has been on the angling community.
Yeah,
and I mean, we look up to those guys, and they've been a huge influence on us. And we try to, consider them partners in this whole thing. We're all kind of trying to do the same thing.
for sure.
But there's a lot of overlap, but there's some differences. We're trying to, extend it to many different species, and they're more focused on trout, which is great.
Yeah, Chris hates a redfish, from what I've been told.
he said that a few times.
He has,
and that that's fine. To each their own.
definitely.
The reason we haven't really included redfish is that they're so protected legally already. Like most redfish have upper slots already. So
Definitely.
But that being said, I think we probably will add them, because I was just having a discussion yesterday with one of our fisheries biologists here at DNR.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at our trends for redfish, they're plunging.
Are they?
Trying to figure out why. And, there's a lot of speculation, so, don't quote me on this because there's no science to back it up, but it kind of there's kind of some common sense, because as a result of having an upper slot for redfish for, I don't know how long it's been, maybe 20 years now,
Mm-hmm.
we have incredible full red fishery here, as you do in North Carolina.
Right.
Giant fish. There's literally hundreds of guides here who make a living. Easy to go out there in late summer through early fall and put your clients on these, trophy-sized fish, and many of them in a single day, every single day.
Right.
Problem is, the reason they're inshore is they're spawning. So when you put that much pressure on them while they're trying to spawn, so you catch a fish, is it going to interrupt the process of spawning? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's pretty traumatic.
Definitely.
To be yanked
It
up
would
in the
would
depths.
interfere with my spawning.
It would, yeah, me too. So, but for whatever reason, even though we have this upper slot for redfish, the numbers are not looking good.
Yeah.
So it probably would make sense to have more voluntary releases of redfish too. So, we'll look at that in the future, but
Definitely.
trying to get past our fundraiser right now.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
No,
our number one goal.
while I'm thinking about this, I keep thinking about it and wanting to bring it up at the end. But is there a way that people, if they just like Release Over 20 and want to donate and is there a way people can be monthly supporters of Release Over 20 or anything like that?
Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. We don't have like a monthly thing, at least not yet.
Yeah.
But we do have a way to donate.
Okay.
So we have a brand new website, which I would really love to talk about a little bit.
Let's jump into it.
It's releaseover20.org. So
Okay.
we used to point everyone to .com, which we still own, but the newsites.org. It's a brand new website. It's got tons of information. Cool thing about it is now when you enter your fish, it has real-time data analytics. So as soon as you put in your flounder and then you refresh the site, the number of flounder releases goes up by 1.
That's cool.
So you can actually see it. And we also have angler and state leaderboards that update in real time. And they update for current month, current year, and all time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look back and see, I think, I don't know if you know Corey Mayo from Virginia Beach area. He has some ridiculous number, like 300 and something trout over 20 released.
Wow.
He's like far and away the leader in the country. So he may not even know it, but he's the #1 trout releaser in the whole country.
That's cool.
So now you can actually go and look at it and show your friends or show your mom or something.
Right.
And we have it broken down by state. So it's really cool because basically everything's going in a database, and we can, I can create basically different views that can show the data in different ways.
Yeah.
And I can have it automatically update in real time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun because you can go and see where things stand. There's actually an egg counter too. One of the things we've talked about in the past is that a 20-inch trout releases 20 million eggs a season. They spawn about every 4 to 5 days, which is something I never knew. I always thought they spawned only a few times and it was on the full moon.
Wow.
But not true. They spawn about every 4 to 5 days. So they're
throughout the whole year, or just the warmer months?
Well, during the spawning season. So
during the spawning season. Okay.
Charleston, it's like maybe mid-April or late April until September.
Wow.
There's there's peaks and troughs in it, so the peaks around May and June.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Drops off in the height of the summer, and then it picks back up a little bit in the fall.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll catch a trout in September and you'll find some eggs in it.
Yeah.
To keep it. That's a lot of eggs. So they're just constantly putting eggs out there every single night. There's a spawning group every single night spreading eggs around, and 20 million eggs. It's based on actual data from a research paper. It's not exactly 20 million. It might be plus or minus.
Right.
But in general, it's around 20 million. So what we do is we take if you just count every trout entered in the database, you count it as only a 20-inch trout. Of course, the bigger they get, the more eggs they spawn.
Right.
But we just take the minimum, which would be a 20-inch trout, and you only count it once, even though maybe you released it last year and it's still alive and it's still spawning. Only count one season, and you just add that number up and see where it is. Well, we just passed 5,000 trout entered in the program since its beginning. And that equates to over 100 billion eggs spawned.
Wow, that's so cool.
Just that's another. You look at that, and it's like, wow, that's pretty wild.
That is wild.
A lot of eggs. Of course, they don't all make it to be real trout.
Right.
But I'm trying to.
They got to be eggs first, though.
Understand what that relates to in terms of fish, and I'm talking with some biologists right now and trying to make some rough guesses, and they're real careful. They're like, well, I don't know. I don't want you to quote me on this because we don't really know for sure. And I'm like, that's cool.
Right.
We're not holding anyone to the fire, but I just want a realistic, rough idea.
An idea, yeah.
So that people understand. If I release this fish, it might end up in 3 seasons to be 100.
Right.
So, because every fish ultimately it matters. It's like you remove a fish, you're basically cutting a root of a tree.
Right.
So, like offspring, those offspring make offspring and whatnot.
For sure.
But
that's crazy. That's cool. You'll have those numbers.
Analytics is pretty cool. That was a long way to go around saying we do have a donate.
Yeah, that was the basis of this.
And we do have apparel. We have the solar shirts and some hats, and of course you can buy the decals if you want instead of otherwise you can get them for free just by entering the fish.
I don't know how difficult it would be, but I feel like a monthly, just put in your information and just like a monthly withdraw from people's accounts. Like I know I would sign up for that if it was like I could do $10 a month to
like a membership program.
Like a membership program, yeah.
Yeah.
You just join and you're a donor to Release Over 20. It helps fund and inspire all these people to release fish over 20. I think that would just be a cool way to, even if it was just 50 people that were given $10 a month, and it would still help out. And I feel like it would. I feel like people would catch on to it for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at that. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. That's how Netflix gets us too. The $10 a month. That just you might not watch Netflix for a couple months, but the $10 still comes out. Well, cool. Well, is there anything else about? Oh, let's talk a little bit about the event that y'all have coming up for Release Over 20.
So we have a fundraiser event coming up February 5th down here in Charleston,
Mm-hmm.
and it's being run by the Post and Courier, which is the biggest newspaper in South Carolina. They have an event staff, and they're going to do a first-class job. It's going to be at Firefly Distillery, which is a great, big, huge venue. There's going to be a live bluegrass band, oyster roast, barbecue, and we have a number of speakers lined up. So I'm pretty excited about our speaker lineup because I think it's going to be really cool. One thing I'm really excited about is we have a women in angling panel.
Oh, cool.
Which is going to be made of some of the women who are sort of leaders in our area, whether they own a business or they're charter captains or kind of entrepreneurial in the field.
Uh-huh.
I think that's going to be something that we haven't had a lot of in this town. It would be really good for people to hear from them and like what their challenges are.
For sure.
That's not so much related to the conservation cause, but we do have one that's, you remember Ralph, my partner Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
So we have him and Mike Abel Sr. Mike Abel Sr. was the founder of Hadrill's Point Tackle, which is like the one remaining long-time local tackle shop here in the area. And he and Ralph were two of the three original fishing guides in Charleston.
That's so cool.
Isn't that crazy?
There's
literally
crazy.
like 400 now.
Yeah,
But
golly.
They were charter captaining here in the 70s.
Mm.
And I have those two on a panel to talk about. It's called Charleston Fishing Then and Now.
That's awesome.
And
that'll be interesting.
My goal in this whole thing is, because I've heard these stories from both of them over the years, just, on the fishing boat, I hear, man, you should have seen what it used to be like, the striper used to be like in the Cooper River. And he'd tell me, and I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And so people's idea of the abundance of the fishery is relative.
Very.
I've fished for like 15 years, and I've seen it decline, but I've also seen where like the red fishing has been night and day from where it is today. And in my reference point of what great fishing is when I started fishing. But we don't have, most people in this area don't have any idea what it used to really be. And these two guys are going to get up there and tell us, like, this is what the abundance used to be in Charleston. And the thing I want people to take away from it is, why can't we take action to get it back there?
For sure.
We get it, like, not just back to how it was 5 years ago, but let's have a stretch goal and try to make it what it was 30 years ago or something.
Definitely.
We all want that. You don't want to buy a boat and then just go. You might as well buy a sailboat, right? If you don't have any fish to catch.
Right. It definitely is getting windier every year. That's for sure. That's one thing we can count on.
But who wouldn't want to have more fish and more quality fish to catch?
100%.
It'd be great for tourism. It'd be just a lot of fun. We'd support fishing guides and show a little restraint, and I really think we can make a difference. So there's that panel. We also have Matt Chipperfield coming up from Jacksonville, and most of your followers probably know who Matt is.
For sure.
Kind of a trout fishing legend. I've fished with him a few times. He's got a degree in fisheries biology. He knows a lot about the behaviors of these trout. He's very analytical. Like in the Guana Reservoir down there, he knows an incredible amount of information about how to best target these fish. He's going to come up and just give us like a master class in you want to catch big trout, listen careful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's amazing. So I'm really excited about him. And then our headliner is C.A. Richardson from Fladd Class TV. He's going to come up and talk to us about conservation and fishing. And you know how he can go. You just kind of give him a subject and just
he can go with it.
He'll run with it
for sure.
He's just so good, and it's going to be a big draw for anglers here too. So
yeah, that's
we're having a silent auction, which I appreciate you stepping up. We're going to have a bunch of guides, trips to bid on. It's going to be online so that anyone in the country can bid on the items. Most of the items right now are local from Charleston. There's some really good stuff. There's fishing rods, reels, coolers, several charters from Charleston.
Yeah.
We got yourself, so you can bid on a charter with Jud out of North Carolina, and I'm hoping in the next week and a half to add a bunch from other states too.
Yeah.
I'd love some from Texas and Florida and Gulf Coast if possible.
For sure.
And try to get that in, and all the money raised from that is going to go directly to us. Whereas the rest of the fundraiser they have to cover the cost of putting the thing on, and then overage from that will go to us. So we'll see where it ends up, but we're optimistic it'll raise a fair amount of money for us.
Yeah, I think it will, man.
We can decide how to best use it. So all that money is going to go toward, like I said, we've got a bunch of concepts for incentives for people like guides to get involved and individual anglers to get involved and keep entering more fish and get more back. So we're basically trying to reward people for doing the right thing.
Definitely.
And the more income we make, the more we can do. Whether it's like magazine ads or going to trade shows. So we also want to do a bunch of educational stuff. Like I'm working with some professors and people from DNR about trying to bridge the gap between what we know are the best practices for releasing fish, so they survive the release, to actual everyday angler, how to apply that to the real world.
Right.
I see that a lot. There's a lot of great information that's all factually accurate. Like minimizing time out of the water, handling them, keeping them wet, that stuff. But at least I say, if I look and I just passively observe anglers in the water, they're not doing it. They're boat flipping fish. They're bouncing around the bottom of the boat. They're holding them up for a camera out of the water for 3 minutes. They're dropping the fish in the bottom of the boat. I think we can improve on that just through trying to make practical suggestions on how to just change the behavior of that a little bit. So that's kind of a goal we have going forward.
That just makes me think about one thing that is a good topic to think about and talk about, and that's like even still handling and managing smaller fish correctly as well. Because I feel like you catch a big fish and you're like 100% planning on releasing it. You're taking really good care of it. You're keeping it wet. You're putting it back in the water well. But like you said, boat flipping fish, and I can be guilty of that sometimes. If I'm on a really good bite and I'm just trying to get a trout in real quick and get him back in the water. But like an 8-inch trout that you're throwing back, he's already 8 inches closer to being a 30-inch trout than a trout that's not born yet. So it's like taking that time to release every fish properly and handle every fish well is something I need to be more aware of, and I feel like most people need to be more aware of just handling fish well. So,
and me too.
Yeah,
I've like lately, I've been on myself as well. I'm like, I really didn't handle that fish very well.
Right.
Sometimes I think I did well, and I maybe still didn't do very well. So we can all, and I'm definitely not ever saying I'm holier than thou. I'm learning too, and it's like just kind of like talking about the science and not knowing the science. Like I was as guilty of that as anybody, but once I looked into the facts, it was like a game changer for me.
For sure.
Attitude. So.
For sure.
Yeah, we're all trying to get better.
Most definitely, and what I love about Release Over 20, and especially about you, Dave, is like being in the industry, especially in North Carolina, there's so many people that can sit there and complain about what's happening and complain about a fishery so much, but no one does anything about it. I'm not saying no one does, but a lot of people love to just talk about it every day at the boat ramp, on the phone, over text messaging, on social media, and never do anything. But the fact that y'all are, getting together and really doing something to change this is awesome. And I feel like hopefully that'll be an inspiration to other people that want to, whether it's Release Over 20 or speak up in their own areas about certain issues or start their own thing. It doesn't matter how it happens. We just need to be a voice for conservation, and it's a big inspiration to see somebody actually doing it. Because out of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, not that there's not some other organization that's tried to rise up and be a voice for releasing fish and taking care of fish, but I don't know of one. So, and you've got your classic CCA and stuff like that, but a grassroots movement of people that want to see the fisheries changed is very powerful. So I think that's super cool.
I appreciate that. I have, it's kind of like a personal thing for me. I have very low tolerance for people that bitch and don't do anything about it.
Right.
So, whether we make a difference long term is debatable.
Right.
But at least we're trying.
Exactly. That's
all you can ask for.
And having fun while doing it too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Well,
I appreciate you saying that. That's really rewarding.
At least there's one guy out there that's going to try, and that's you. Well, let's talk a little bit about your fishing down there lately. There's no Release Over 20 without the passion of being on the water and catching fish. So how has it been this fall and this winter down there, trout fishing and just fishing in general?
Pretty good. Charleston right now, we're kind of a sleeper in the country. The trout fishing in Charleston, and I got to knock on wood because you never know when the cold snap's going to come, but
right now,
right now, actually this weekend,
yeah.
I'm not worried about this one.
No, this one's not too bad.
It's the best it's been by every measure than in a long time.
That's awesome.
The DNR trammel net surveys, like last year, they had the largest number of trout ever recorded in the trammel net.
Wow.
And we're starting to catch fish in areas that I've never seen them before, namely in the fresh water.
That's awesome.
And I was talking to my friend Matt Perkinson at DNR. He was saying that he believes it's because there's so many fish now, they're starting to spread into other areas. there's just so many fish, which is amazing. This spring we had a pretty, I'm not going to say a lot, but we had, for this area, a lot of 23-inch trout. And it's because it's been a fair amount of years since we've had a freeze, a significant freeze. And I caught this year already. I caught a 23 and a 24.
Nice.
So I think those 23s are now probably 24s. And, we, knock on wood, we get through this winter, we're going to start having some pretty good trout here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's really exciting for me.
Definitely.
I love them.
That's super cool.
My goal is to catch a 27 in South Carolina. And I may die trying, but
I think it's going to happen.
Every winter that comes, I'm closer.
I want to be on the boat the day that happens.
Dude, I'll freak out.
So, in South Carolina, how many trout over 25 inches do you feel like you hear of being caught in a year?
I hear of maybe a dozen.
Maybe a dozen. So that's the thing with like our fishery here in North Carolina right now. Like we get big fish, but man, our fishery is just so cyclical as far as numbers of trout, and that there's lots of practices that go on that can equate to that. But like this trout season was terrible for us. I mean, there's big fish caught here every year, but it's like the everyday man's like every fisherman's fish is different each season. It was very, very poor for our numbers of like the 16 to 20 inch trout this year.
Like 2 years ago, it was a banner year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, you couldn't go to an inlet in November and fish the creeks around an inlet and not catch 60, 70 trout that were all like 17 to 20 inches.
You think, is it gill netting or are they migratory or?
I think it's just I mean, that year they were fished. Trout are, I don't know how popular trout fishing is in South Carolina, but it's extremely popular here. I mean, there's a lot. I think it's a combination between commercial and recreational abuse on the fish. Like, just so many people hitting them, and they all, like, these big pulses of them come in and they stage on the inlet, around the inlets, and there'll be 5 boats on every bank when it's good, and there's just, everybody's keeping their limit every day recreationally, and then there's commercial guys out there trying to make a living as well, and it just, I think they just can't take it, because based off of that year, 2 years ago, I mean, we haven't had a freeze, nothing. It should be better and better each year. And part of it, I think, has to do with, a lot of them are migratory, and maybe the temperature of the water up north or south, like, we just don't get the same pushes each year. So they're just, when they migrate like that, it's hard to really put your finger on it. I mean, I know they definitely get overfished here for sure, but
it begs the question of what led to them being so good that one year, though.
Exactly.
That doesn't really hold that, because the pressure's probably always been there.
Yeah.
But they must be coming from somewhere, it seems like.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of fish out of the Pamlico Sound. We get a lot of tagged fish out of the Chesapeake Bay.
I think that's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's not well known. I believe that. I don't have any data to back it up, but my friend Dan Connolly in Burrell's Inlet, I think he's caught a fish tagged in North Carolina.
Really?
Or maybe it was even Virginia Beach.
Have I told you the story of me sight fishing the migratory trout before?
I don't think so.
So I think it was October, and there had been a couple little pulses of trout. I didn't have a trip. I ran out one afternoon to try to trout fish by myself, and wasn't doing anything around the inlets, but it was slick calm in the ocean and no swell. So I was like, I had a tower boat at this time. I was like, I'm going to go run down the beach and see if I can find some redfish on the beach. And so, like, I come out the inlet, hang a left, start working up this island called Lee Island, and immediately see this school of fish, and I'm like, oh, sweet. And I get up on them. I'm like, oh, those are bluefish. I'm not going to cast in there. Like, I thought it was a group of bluefish pushing down the beach. There was gray, bigger bodied gray fish, and didn't cast. And then, like, 30 feet down the bank, there's another school. I let, like, 5 or 6 of these schools of fish come by. And then finally I was like, you know what, forget it. Maybe not. They were spread out maybe 50 yards. So I'd see a pod of them come through anywhere from like 5 to 50. And then finally I was like, I'll catch a bluefish, and threw in there, and it was like a 22-inch trout. And it was these pods of trout, and they ended up getting kind of tough to catch. I was catching some of the like 17 to 21, 22-inch fish. But every once in a while, honest, hand on the Bible, there'd be like a pod of like 5 to 8 fish that were massive, all swimming together down the beach. Like, laid my own eyes on them. People can believe me if they want to or not, but they were definitely swimming in size classes, like, some smallers and some bigger ones. But every time I saw those big fish, I saw a couple groups of them, and they were all swimming together with other big fish down the beach. Every group coming from the north, heading south in September. And so I think they get in the ocean and just push away from that cold weather. Down around you, it might be more of a local, because the water's, you might have a much larger local population that just sticks around all the time because the temperature doesn't change that much. But a lot of those fish from the bay and the Pamlico Sound, I think, do pulse down in the ocean. But I've never been able to replicate that. I've tried to go out there on calm days and see them. But yeah. I imagine that's what guys are catching. Like, we have a lot of surf fishermen in North Carolina that love to go throw MirrOlures in the surf for trout at night. And that's what they're running into, probably, are these pulses of fish coming down the beach like that. But to see them was really cool, and I could have just never casted and just thought they were bluefish and was going to get bit off, but I'm glad I did. It'll probably never happen again. But
I probably wish you'd cast earlier.
Yeah, even still, the big ones were tough. I never got a bite from any of those bigger fish out of there. They're just tougher fish to get to eat.
So, yeah, that'll haunt your dreams.
I know.
Man.
It was
really cool.
That was one of those, you get some of those few moments on the water where you learn so much from one thing that happens, and that was one for me. Just seeing those fish move down the beach was really cool. But so you're trout fishing down there. What are some of your tactics in the winter as far as targeting the speckled trout? I'm curious, being in South Carolina, if it's pretty similar to here. You're dealing with a lot of current. What kind of stuff do you like to throw, and where do you look for them?
So we have giant tides here.
Right.
I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
6 foot on average.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of water moving in and out all the time. So In the wintertime, what I've found in the past is that the trout move way up at the creeks into almost fresh water. I'm talking like 7, 8 miles from the inlet, and they're definitely moved. They've moved in there now.
Right.
Usually takes until about January till they really move up. And I'm finding some of those fish there, but I'm also finding them down by the harbor, which is totally different.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why they're there, because I tend to find them there more in the springtime. But kind of, some typical big going on, and I've caught some of those bigger trout in the saltier water.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm catching over 20s way up the creek too. So
Yeah.
it's like I don't really know why some are low and some are high, but it could just again be that we have such a population of trout that they're kind of everywhere. But there doesn't seem to be a big pile of trout in any certain one location. It's kind of all over.
For sure.
I've been throwing a lot of hard lures. Like, I follow all the podcasts and look at all the online information. I'm throwing mirror lures and slick lures and a lot of stuff. And I'm having some success on them. But it's going to sound like an advertisement, but I'm catching more fish on our jigs.
Yeah.
And Z-Mans. And where I kind of have two profiles that I use all the time, and one is like a trout eye jig on a minnows. If you throw like a 3/16 trout eye on a minnows and swim that through the water and look at it, to me it looks like the most real baitfish imitation I've ever seen. That's not actual bait fish. It just has incredible action.
Yeah.
And I've caught some of my bigger trout on that. I'm also using the Texas eye with a 4-inch center jerk shads. Those are my two profiles that I'm using all the time.
Yeah.
And I just caught the 24 I just caught was on the Society, and the new C.A. Richardson color called Get Her Done.
Yeah. I like that color.
I don't like the name. I hate the name, but I love the color. Color has been lights out for trout and redfish. I try all the colors. That one's become one of my new favorites.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that. If you look on my rods while I'm fishing, that's what you're gonna see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I also like the pure white, the white. It's called pearl.
Yeah.
It's in the E-man thing, but the pearl minnows has been, if you know me or seen like a lot of my past things, people around here call it the Fladd shad because I use it all the time. I'm probably one of the few people that just throws plain white, but that thing's produced for me over and over again.
Yeah, that man, we were talking about that on a podcast that I did earlier today, actually, about white is just so overlooked but so powerful. It's such a good color for so many clear water, dirty water, just so many different scenarios. And I'm with you. Like, I've got thousands of dollars probably of hard baits because I listen to all the podcast and we do have some of the fisheries here. Like, I feel like all those hard baits, they really shine in those non-current scenarios, like 2 to 8 feet of water, no current, fish laying out on those gradual flats, and hard baits and suspending baits just work so well in that fast current. Like, I catch fish on hard baits, but man, they're not as effective as a soft plastic or a swim bait. So it's and that's the tough thing too. It's like, I mean, there's definitely applications, to fish those hard baits, but I don't really pull them out much unless I'm up in the New River where you fished before and those types of scenarios. Do you have any of that non-current type of fishing in your area for trout, or is most of it always in some current?
Yeah, we do have a few areas you can get out of the current, and it's that's where I'm throwing them. Like, it's like you said, and I'm not saying those lures don't work. And I know they work.
Right.
Some of the biggest trout on suspending lip jerk baits.
For sure.
And I know you won't catch as many, but usually when you do catch them, they're going to be quality fish.
Right.
It's just a matter of sticking with it. But, I've been in a few cases where I've been in the trout, it's like almost every cast. So the first thing you do is start experimenting with different things and see what works, and it'd be like on a jig, I'm catching them every cast. And then I'll throw hard lures in there and work them multiple different ways, and I'm like catching one every 3 casts.
Right.
So it's just trial and error. But it's like you said, like down here in Charleston, it's really hard to fish those baits because we have so much current.
Right.
So um, it's a combination of things. They certainly work, and they work really well.
They're just
Here,
hard in the current.
It's not the best
For
thing to
sure.
do. So.
Most of my big trout have come on the redfish eye with a 5-inch diesel. And a lot of them come in the boat basins, like out of the current in the winter when it gets cold, and just slow rolling those things under docks and whatnot, and catching and a lot of white and mulletron, either just all white or that mulletron color by Z-Man have caught some big ones for me. But man, those Z-Mans with depending upon the size, whether it's a trout eye or redfish eye, and even the Texas eye. Like I love about swimming a swim bait on a Texas eye because the way the head kind of wobbles with the tail, it's just like this really pretty natural swimming motion. I think it does really, really well. But a swim bait in our types of areas, I feel like is money. Is just a good way to catch big ones.
Yeah. So the cool thing is the last 2 trips when I caught those big trout, the amazing thing is that I've also ended up catching the margarita slam on those. You know what that is?
Yeah. You told me the margarita slam.
Talked about it before.
Yeah, that's
Red
pretty
fish,
cool.
Trout, flounder, striper, largemouth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
why margarita slam again? You explained that one time, but I can't remember.
Because, and this is I can't. So a guy on one of our forums here named it because I was talking about it, and I said I need a name for the slam, and he said it's obvious it's got to be the margarita slam because it's salty and sweet water.
Oh, that's right. I like that.
It's brackish water. Like it goes from, it's fun because it's a challenge. So there's always a challenge for anyone in fishing, whether you're a beginner or you think you're pretty good. Well, to catch one of those is a wide range of fish, right? So you're not often going to catch a largemouth in saltwater.
Right.
Not often going to catch a trout in freshwater. The other species, they're going to be anywhere in the brackish water or either extreme, So it's one thing, and I'll fully admit, the 2 that I've caught, the 2 slams that I've caught the last 2 trips were kind of accidental. Like I had the traditional slam, and then I went upriver in the brackish water and just found striper and random largemouth, and was like, wow. I caught him right. Like it's not really the right time of year.
Right.
November's prime time.
Yeah.
January, not so much. So it's kind of a thrill to be able to catch them. But what's really fun is when you go out on a certain day and you say, today I'm going to catch a margarita slam.
Yeah.
And you purposely try to do it.
Yeah.
But that's really rewarding because you got to put your head together. It's like where do flounder hang out? Well, their ambush predators are going to be on dock pilings or on hard structure with current. Want to catch a largemouth, go upriver for a chatterbait.
That's
trout.
Cool.
You want to go toward the harbor where it's more salty and catch them in those spots. Redfish are kind of dumb. You catch them almost anywhere. That's the easy one. But striper are difficult, man, because they're marauders. They're just always moving and they're chasing bait around. And you go places where you found them in the past, but doesn't mean they're going to be there.
Right.
So if you can go there on purpose and catch one on purpose.
Yeah, that's cool.
Really rewarding. So I have a lot of fun trying to target that slam.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It keeps me really interested.
I'm gonna have to come there and try to do that sometime. What would you call it if you included a black drum and a sheep's head into that too? That's probably impossible to do in a day.
You'll have to make your own name up for that. That's half the fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like you'd have to crack into some live bait or something like that to make that happen.
Yeah, you would for sure.
That would be tough. That would be very tough.
Really rare to catch a black drum on artificial.
I know except for in Louisiana. In Louisiana, you can make it happen.
Yeah. That's what I was saying about. I need to understand sheep's head more because the other thing is, I talked about that 18 and 20 year difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, up in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, those fish get really big. They must be on a totally different growth.
Yeah.
schedule than it is here. And in Florida, they don't ever really get that big. So
Yeah,
and then
they're
in the
always kind of
Gulf,
little.
they'll easily eat an artificial lure. So they're really different depending on where in the country they are.
It's funny. One thing I heard one time, I don't know if this is true, and I've always shared this with people like it is, so I probably should look into it, but that like most fish species, the larger of that class of fish usually lives the furthest north. So like you think about like blue marlin, bonefish, redfish, like, and if you think about it, it all makes sense. Like, all right, where do the biggest redfish come from? It's like kind of the Chesapeake Bay in that area, and then where do the biggest blue marlin come from? North Carolina to Virginia, but you catch them all the way down the coast. And I wouldn't say it's the same thing with trout, but because they go.
I think, well, it is true for trout, and I've heard that also, but I've heard it's also like it's the extremes of the range is where they're the biggest.
Okay, gotcha.
So that might be also on the southern range, right?
Yeah,
and that's definitely the case with trout, right?
That's definitely true. Yeah,
the mid part of Florida and the lower Laguna Madre, you've got some giants, and then I never knew until I started this Release Over 20 what a mecca Virginia Beach is.
Yeah, Virginia's got some big fish.
Literally the capital of trout fishing in the country.
Yeah.
By any measure. I mean, Texas is as well. I think Texas isn't participating as much, but obviously they have an incredible trout fishery.
For sure. Yeah, we need to do a trip. Have you been up and fished around Virginia Beach?
Yeah.
I haven't either.
Next year.
We should do a trip up there.
I mean,
Are you going this year?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Sweet.
No, I haven't any hard plans yet, but I'm definitely gonna make it happen.
Yeah. this November or something. I've always wanted in the summer to go out. I've been out there and duck hunting, but there's an area called Tangier Island. It's like in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, 15 miles from land, and it's got a bunch of big grass flats and stuff, but just stripers and trout. Just tons of stripers and trout out there, and big ones, and
Awesome.
Be a fun place to go fish. But
Yeah. I'd be down if you want to go.
yeah, I think that'd be super fun to do. I've always wanted to go do it. I always like I try to. I've made some relationships up there, and I'm always like, hey, and I just always kind of get ghosted when I finally talk about going up there to fish. People are like, just stop texting me back.
That's happened to me recently as well. Someone else I talked to instantly ghosted.
Yeah, it's it would be. Yeah, I totally get it. But well, sweet.
I won't ghost you.
Yeah, we no need to ghost each other.
We'll be pioneers.
Exactly. Well, cool. Well, is there anything else before we shut this down that you want to mention about Release Over 20 or iStrike or anything like that we haven't touched?
I just I encourage people and ask them if you believe in Release Over 20, what we're doing, and consider either coming to the event or on that day we're gonna just have like some kind of a link to say if you don't mind send us $20 or something like that.
Right.
So if you can donate even though you're not here locally, we're gonna raise a lot of money in Charleston, but that money is going to be used throughout the range of our participation.
For sure.
So even though it's coming in here, it's going to be distributed elsewhere mostly. And, we just ask for the support, and we're just going to try to get the most people with that money possible to start participating.
For sure.
Hopefully long term, there'll be measurable difference.
That's super cool. And yeah, whenever you have those links and whatnot, let me know, because I'll definitely push them out on the podcast as well as on social media and whatnot to get that out there.
At Release Over 20 on social, and releaseover20.org is a new website.
Cool. Well, heck yeah. Well, guys,
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. And as always, we'll you and I will do a podcast at least once a year and catch up and talk fishing and talk who knows what, but. Maybe eventually, if I get really cool and really big, then I can start doing like podcasts about anything I want, just like Joe Rogan or like the Meat Eater podcast used to be like a hunting podcast, but now they just kind of talk about whatever they want to talk about on there. So maybe we'll talk about something else, but hopefully it'll always just be fishing.
All right. Well, you need to get your butt down here to Charleston here sometime soon.
I know. I want to do it maybe this year. That's a trip that I can make happen pretty easily, jetting down there in the morning and fishing for the day or something. So.
Yeah.
Maybe in the spring when it starts to warm up a little bit, we'll do a little trout fishing down there or something. But
sounds great. Just let me know.
Well, guys, thanks for checking out another episode of Eastern Current. Dave, thanks for coming on as always. we thank y'all for your support over here. If you love our content and want to check out more content that you can't get on the public internet, check out our Patreon page. We've got a lot of extra episodes over there each week, and different videos and whatnot, doing some satellite map studying over there as well. So go check that out if you want to see some more Eastern Current. But guys, thanks again. We'll see you next week. Later.